Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, here with your hurricane outlook and discussion for Sunday, the 14th of June, 2015. Let's get right into it. A lot to talk about today. This is Invest Area 91L off of the Yucatan Peninsula. It should come in the next couple of days. Take a little bit larger look at this, zoom in on it. This is the potential track area over the next few days, and as you can see, it is generally aimed towards the state of Texas, where they really don't need any more rainfall, especially in the copious amounts that it could arrive in via a tropical cyclone. Now here's a satellite animation, not very impressive for sure. There's a sharp trough sitting in here. This is not your typical Genesis source. In other words, this is not your seedling that we usually look for, a tropical wave that emerges from Africa. That's a much more typical seedling. There's other ways for tropical storms and hurricanes to get started, and sometimes these sharp surface troughs with a little bit of an upper level trough associated with them will work their way down to the surface enough, take advantage of that very warm water, and they become, over a long process, a tropical depression, a storm, and eventually a hurricane. And if we look at this, we can tell there's a couple of things going on. First, here's Carlos, and the upper level outflow, what little of it there is from Carlos, kind of coming across and blowing the clouds away, and you can see that here. A little bit of wind shear is what that is. We're not seeing the cloud mass going out in a clockwise fashion very uniformly. And for those of you who track hurricanes, you've seen that. And this doesn't look like that. This is kind of a mess. There's a little bit of upper level divergence right here, perhaps, where the air is spreading apart and in the upper levels, allowing that low level air to rise and then spread out. There's a little bit of that going on, hence the reason for the investigation here, what we call the invest. And so there you have it, but it's not very well organized, and that's good news. Now, part of that is that we are not in a particularly favorable phase of what we call the MJO, or the Madden-Julian Oscillation. This is the west coast of Africa here. This is the east coast of North America. There's Florida, and the Yucatan, and then South America over here. And all of this green that you see here is the upward motion, favorable phase of the Madden-Julian Oscillation, and that's clearly not in the Atlantic Basin right now. In fact, we have a lot of brown shading, which is more indicative of sinking air and not upward motion. So the atmosphere really isn't that ideal at all. But we do have this sort of one small area where the sinking motion in the atmosphere is not quite as prevalent. And so we're seeing Carlos take advantage of that, and to some extent Invest Area 91L try to take advantage of that. And if we look at the Pacific shot here, you can also see parts of North America. Here's 91L, here's Carlos, and these are sort of your leftovers of this very strong Madden-Julian Oscillation that moved across the Pacific, spawned a very active time for typhoons during the month of May, had a couple of strong hurricanes out here in the eastern Pacific, and the third one there, Carlos, became a hurricane, not very strong, and it just goes to show you that these upward motion pulses that typically move across the tropics with time, about every 30 to 40 days or so, just on a continuous cycle, sometimes more amplified than others, can help to set off these tropical cyclone bursts. Right now, most of the tropical Pacific, with the exception of Carlos here, is very quiet, but that'll probably change as this Madden-Julian Oscillation moves its way out of the active phases for the Atlantic and Eastern Pacific and back into the Western Tropical Pacific with time. And so what all that means is, well, you do have this area to look at, but not very favorable conditions for it to take advantage of. See, everything's connected. Nevertheless, this is the model plot. You can pretty much discount this one and this one. Don't even worry about those. Maybe one day they'll run this model mapping software to exclude the L-bar and the Climatology and Persistence version 5, or whatever that is, CLIPER 5. The rest of the model guidance pretty tightly clustered. I think you can clearly see on a track towards maybe Corpus Christi area, between Houston, Galveston, and Corpus Christi, and certainly north of Brownsville. But that's the track of any low-level center that forms. Very important to note that. So if that center forms and comes right along the median of this track, right down the middle, that's going to put the upper Texas coast on the right-hand side of that track. Typically, the onshore flow side, so coastal flooding could be an issue all the way up into southwest Louisiana, as well as the wetter side, where more upward motion's taking place, the rain bands are coming onshore, etc., and so forth. So intensity-wise, around the center, if it was going to be a powerful hurricane, this would matter a lot where that center goes. But the intensity guidance suggests that, even if you try to find some kind of an average in here, no, it doesn't even really make it to tropical storm strength. So we're not worried about the intensity wind-wise as much, because the main impact is going to be rain. And I bring to your attention the Gulf of Mexico sea surface temperature chart. Everything that you see here in this sort of weird green color is 29 degrees Celsius or higher. And I say higher because this yellowish color, orange color up here, is 30 degrees Celsius. That's mid to upper 80s. And that translates to a lot of precipitable moisture, humidity, whatever you want to call it, being wrung out of the atmosphere by this developing area of low pressure down here that's going to move up towards the Texas coastline over the next few days and just literally sling this moisture onshore and bring it with this tropical system. Whether it develops into a depression or a storm, it doesn't matter really, because the rainfall is going to be tremendous with this. Now I want to take a quick look here at the weather.gov site and just show you something. The southeast part of Texas here, even around Austin and San Antonio today, with this surge of moisture coming in already, flash flooding is a problem there. Houston, and then on up into Oklahoma and parts of northwest Arkansas over time. This entire area going to just get hammered with a lot of moisture over the next 5 to 7 days. And then right here along southwest Louisiana and the extreme northeast part of the Texas coastline, maybe some coastal flooding issues as that onshore flow persists. So there's a lot that's going to be going on. Weather.gov is a great resource, especially if you're down in the area in Texas. Put in your zip code, and then you can read about any pertinent watch and warning information, special weather statements for your area. Now, in the eastern Pacific, we have what is now Tropical Storm Carlos. It was a hurricane, but now it's down to tropical storm intensity, mainly because it's sitting kind of over the same area, upwelling underneath itself, that warm water getting churned up. And then it should start moving again and maybe make it back to hurricane strength over time. But the close proximity to the Mexican coastline should keep this from developing much, but that means more rain for that area as well. And you can see most of the model guidance taking this along the Mexican coastline. The official track here takes it into Mexico over time. We'll see if that happens or not. At least the intensity guidance right up here, borderline tropical storm, category 1 hurricane, and then it really starts to just kind of bottom out over time. It'll probably fluctuate back and forth between a 70 mile per hour tropical storm and a 75 to 80 mile per hour hurricane. It doesn't really matter. The effects are generally the same. Again, it's that heavy rainfall. Let me go back to a better shot here. Let's just do a still picture. It's that heavy rainfall that I am most concerned with. If we look at a satellite picture, not very impressive, Carlos, but lots of moisture down here over this region, and there's mountains in here, and if this does come inland and then die out over interior Mexico, flash flooding could be a big problem for that area because you have elevation. So there's a lot going on in a short amount of distance. Got Carlos sitting here, and then just off the edge of the picture over the Yucatan, Invest Area 91L, and everybody will be watching that to see what happens as it approaches the Houston, Corpus Christi, maybe Lake Charles area, and then further north, Austin, maybe San Antonio up towards Dallas, and eventually Oklahoma City, kind of around that western edge of the big high pressure area that's sitting over the southeast. There's going to be a lot of rain along that western edge, and a lot to talk about over the coming days. And I will be doing so. This video blog will be every day for sure this coming week as we watch what happens with 91L and, of course, Carlos in the eastern Pacific. So stay aware and stay safe out there. We want you back to be able to learn something from these videos. All right, well, I'm Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com. As always, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate your time and attention, and we'll talk again tomorrow.